I'm truly sorry for keeping you indoors. I would have given you a good tour of the pack, but unfortunately, we're currently battling a virus. Daniel apologized for the umpteenth time to the genuinely surprised Leah at the dining table. It was late already, and yes, they had spent a considerable amount of time getting to know each other well. She got to know about the werewolf community. Thanks to that, Leah got to know that a werewolf has to be born or made, making her a made werewolf, infected by a near-death mauling. Apparently she was strong enough and had survived and gotten infected with the virus, since lycanthropy was an extremely aggressive genetic mutation that jumps to the host with the spread of genetic material. After then she would heal and transform at the moon phase, or while experiencing a period of intense emotion, and afterwards begin to shift at will. I don't understand. I thought you guys don't get sick? Leah asked, completely confused. We don't get sick, but this is not an ordinary virus. A dark witch cast a spell on my pack and it came about. The virus suppresses our wolf side and thus rendering us human and easily susceptible to the disease. Oh, she said, and dug her fork uninterestedly into the meaty dish before her. It seems werewolves were fond of meats, cause all the dishes presented before her had more meat than actual solids in it. But unfortunately, her fangs were aching for something else. Daniel sighed when he saw her picking at her food. It seems the vampire was right. She was a made hybrid. Made hybrid? How funny, such a thing has never been heard of in history. It's impossible to be a vampire and werewolf at same time unless you were born one, but made? Impossible. It was against the law of nature, an abomination. He reluctantly threw a blood bag at her, which she caught with fluid motion accompanied by a questioning brow. The vampire came by, said it would help or something, Daniel said, and she lit up at once. Asher came by. He really did. Why didn't he come visit her? Oh right, she sighed. This was werewolf territory. Werewolves were extremely possessive and aggressive. Encroaching on their territory could mean serious trouble. Though Daniel tried to keep a straight face when she unscrewed the cap, but she could tell from his crinkled and puckered face like crumbled aluminum foil, that he was super uncomfortable with her feeding. Truthfully, Leah was hurt by his attitude, but she forced herself to see from his own point of view too. She understood it wasn't easy for him to accept the fact that his mate was half the creature they were destined to detest. So she consumed her blood drink with lightning speed, but was surprised when he placed another blood bag in front of her. "Take your time," he said to her, and she flashed him a grateful smile. Daniel stood from his seat and left without uttering a word while she savored her meal as expected. Asher's blood was the best. By the time she was done and there was nobody in sight, Leah decided to take a tour of the house. It was obvious the house was a mansion thanks to its countless passageways and rooms that, if not for her great sense of smell, she would have lost her way over and over again. Daniel had told her that this was the pack house, and though some werewolves choose to live separately in their own homes, there were still quite a lot of them occupying the rooms in here. According to Daniel, the pack house, once bustling with activity, have come to a near standstill. The atmosphere was quiet, tensed and gloom. Everyone was scared for their life. A few pack members passed her by, and though they acknowledged her presence by bowing their head, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They were all on face masks and gloves and keeping a good distance from one another. There was no more trust, since one couldn't tell if one was infected unless tested. It wasn't written on the face. Leah returned to her room when she got bored. Daniel wasn't kidding when he told her she was barred from leaving the pack house at the moment. the pack entrance was under barrage of security. Even a fly couldn't sneak in without their notice. She walked into her room's veranda and leaned against the glass balustrade as she stared up to the sky, enjoying the night view. "I'm sorry for leaving abruptly, something came up." Daniel apologized, coming to stand beside her, but unknown to him, she smelled him before she heard him. "You don't need to apologize, I know you have a lot on your plate already," Leah countered, looking away as she felt his heated gaze upon her. She couldn't look him in the eyes, it was doing funny things to her stomach. Suddenly she felt a warm hand on her chin and her face was suddenly turned towards him. As if nature was in cahoots with him, a soft breeze wheezed by and this sweet exotic smell which made her inside stir wafted into her nostrils. For the first time she noticed he smelt like fresh snow mingled with lavender and it made her mouth water. They kept staring into each other's eyes as if spellbound, then Daniel began to lower his head slowly towards her. An internal battle began inside her. This was totally wrong and also totally right. She was crazily conflicted. This was her mate, right? Someone destiny has arranged for her, her own perfect match made in heaven. Then why was she so sure and unsure at same time? What about Asher? Why does she feel so bothered and guilty? But Leah's mind blanked out the moment Daniel's lips covered hers. The pure rush of pleasure that assaulted her made her knees buckle, but his strong, solid arm were there to steady her. Their lips moved at a synchronized space, her body so in tune with his. The kiss was so sweet, savory, but short-lived cause she tore away from his grasp. She let out a sharp gasp the moment she came up for air. Her face was flushed and her breath heavy, her pounding heart doing more harm than good at the moment. "How old are you?" Daniel asked out of nowhere, surprising her. "Why?" she asked. "I'll be 18 in a week time." "Good," he smiled, "cause that's when the mating fever would officially start. Crap. He must be crazy, Asher thought. Why did he leave the girl with Daniel? He knew perfectly well that werewolves were naturally aggressive, vicious, and unpredictable creatures. What if Daniel's wolf takes control and he goes back on this word by marking and mating with the girl? God, he was going crazy. When Asher reached his place, he was surprised to see Ben, Dan, Sabrina, and Zukai all in one place. What an odd combination. "What's going on?" he questioned, walking into the living room and plunking down on the nearest sofa. He was mentally exhausted. "Nothing," they all answered in unison. "Definitely strange." He narrowed his eyes suspiciously at them but didn't say anything. Dan was the most responsible amongst the four, so if he says nothing is wrong he must have settled the issues already. Ben thought his heart was going to leap out of his chest when Asher's eyes suddenly locked on his. What now? Did he figure out everything? He has no idea about the cell phone, right? "Follow me," Asher suddenly ordered him and began to walk towards the direction of his study while Ben swallowed hard. Ben secretly threw a "what's going on" gaze at the others, but they simply shrugged and gave him an "I have no clue" expression in return. Unknown to them, Asher saw their eye communication and his lips curled into a smirk. Something did happen during his absence, but that was not his priority at the moment. Ben walked behind Asher at a slow pace. His head was lowered while his heart was engaged in an internal battle. Why did Asher call only him? Did he find out about the cell phone? Was he about to be skinned alive? Oh no, he can't die yet. He hasn't even finished experimenting his theories on Leah yet, so he can't die. Sit. Ben flinched on hearing his grim command. nevertheless he obeyed. Moving slowly, he eyed the cushion with caution in case of booby traps. Oh yes, you heard him right. He has to search for traps. Asher was the most dangerous whenever he has this blank expression on his face. So Ben sat down with a little of his weight at first to test his theory, but when nothing happened, he sat fully. What next? But what next remained a huge mystery cause for the next 10 minutes. Asher didn't say a word to him. The silence was so heavy and nerve-wracking that Ben thought he was going to pee in his pant. The guy made all the hairs on his body stand. Asher just stood in the middle of the room, regarding him with this stern expression intently. Just when Ben thought he couldn't endure his hot scrutinizing gaze anymore and decided to spill the beans, Asher asked a strange question. "You're Leah's friend, right?" "Hey?" Ben was startled for a moment, and then composed himself. Was this some sort of mental torture? What does him being Leah's friend have to do with this intense interrogation? Yes, Ben choked a reply. Who would she choose? Asher asked with a very serious gaze on his face. Asher turned to face him. The vampire or the werewolf, who would she choose? Ben scratched his scalp nervously. What was going on here? Why did he feel that this question was more dangerous than the secret he was keeping from Asher? I'll need a bit of a background information in order to answer your question, Ben answered, his heart in his mouth when he saw Asher's sour face darken the more. He knew Asher was the vampire, then who was the werewolf? Why would Leah choose between him and a werewolf? Unless he was referring to Leah's vampiric and were side. Bingo, he figured it out. I think Leah likes her vampire side than her werewolf side, judging from her likeness for blood, Ben said, and he swore. Asher's face that was as sour as vinegar moments ago lit up like Christmas. Really? Asher asked with gleamy eyes. Yes, according to my hypothesis, I think her vampiric side has more dominance than her were side. Talk of her thirst for blood, changes, and lately, she's becoming nocturnal, not because her internal clock's out of whack and cannot sleep, but because she's gradually turning out to be like you guys, just as I thought, Asher said, and his face creased into a huge smile of relief. It wasn't just a myth but the truth. Vampires don't sleep. Though they might pretend to rest with their eyes closed, but let not your guard down, they're as active as a griffin. So you're trying to say if she one day has to choose between the werewolf and the vampire, she would take me, the vampire? He asked and simpered. Yeah, probably, Ben said, but frowned afterwards, wondering why Asher was anthropomorphizing the whole thing. Wait a minute, Ben gasped internally as he stumbled upon a startling realization. Did Asher have a love rival? Possibly a werewolf? O.M.G. You can leave then. Asher dismissed Ben before he could say anything else. Though he had a lot of questions on his mind, Ben could only swallow his curiosity and hope to figure them out on his own in a space of time. He couldn't afford to trifle Asher, especially now he was suddenly magnanimous. So the chatterbox Ben went back to the living room without gushing a word. What happened? Everyone surrounded him like bees drawn to honey, with twinkling eyes, their full gossip mode activated. Ben shook his head, unsure. He was strange. Strange? They all chorused. Ben walked to the sofa and sat down while they trailed along, each occupying any space they could find and encircling him. So what happened? Shizukai, who had transformed in a twinkle of an eye, prodded, it was quite obvious she forced her way in. Zukai was never a gossip. It was quite weird and cryptic. Ben murmured by chance, "Does Asher have a love rival?" "Hey? Love rival? Why would he? Asher could easily crush him, after all it runs in the family." Shizukai trailed off when she realized she has disclosed more than was needed. Everyone faced her. All eyes on her. Oh. Leah has been having problems sleeping lately. It wasn't that she was insomniac, but she just didn't feel like it and her body was definitely not complaining. And that was the same case tonight. After that hot kiss she shared with Daniel, she couldn't seem to relax. When she successfully did fall asleep, she had an erotic dream, so vivid and raw that she could have swore it was real. Wait a minute, did she just experience a sleep orgasm for the first time ever? So she stayed up the rest of the night like an owl, binge-watching on television dramas that couldn't seem to take her anxiety away. Leah didn't know what was going on back home, but she definitely knew Asher must have taken care of her family. Though she didn't know how he does that, but it wasn't the first time her family was unfazed about her sudden disappearance, when on a normal day her overprotective mom should be freaking out and contacting every law enforcement agency on Earth known to her. Thankfully morning came, and for the first time since her arrival, Leah devoured her meaty dishes with delight. She was craving meat like crazy today. "How's your shifter's side?" Daniel asked, stunning her. "Hey. I mean, how often do you communicate with your inner wolf, your wolf part? Do you sometimes hear her voice in your head? Or feel something about to rip out of your body, as if trying to take control of you?" Leah stared at him confusedly, a deep furrow plastered on her forehead. "Since never?" Daniel frowned. "That's quite strange. Is it because you're the first of a maid hybrid?" he thought aloud. Daniel inquired further. "Under what moon phase did you first transform? Full moon, gibbous moon, half moon, crescent moon?" Leah dropped her spoon, pushed her food aside and let out an exhausted breath before answering. "I wouldn't exactly describe it as transform, since I haven't shape-shifted into a large-looking ferocious canine form or a wolf-like beast, but I've got this," she said, and flicked out a razor-sharp black talons while her eyes glowed a bright yellow. Being shocked is totally an understatement. Daniel was awed beyond words. He took her hands and began to examine her talons. Truth be told, hers was quite sharper than his. He had claws, not talons. Leah continued, "I was just really angry one time and nearly clawed out Caroline's face with this." Daniel was beginning to get frightened. Was this a good thing? His mate has attributes only a fully transformed werewolf would possess, while she hasn't even achieved her first phase forced transformation. Sure, that was a good thing? Daniel gulped. Now he understood why Asher couldn't tell him a thing. The council would want to exterminate this abomination, so he couldn't risk her safety. "You seem to control this well?" Daniel questioned, judging from the way she was able to extract and retract her talons with ease. "Yes," she laughed. "Asher taught me how to do this while." She faltered when she realized Daniel's expression had changed. "Great." Leah sighed. "You totally did a good work," she berated herself internally. How could she forget werewolves were extremely jealous, protective, and possessive of their mates? "Did you find the wolf that bit me?" she asked, trying to divert his attention from this awkwardly nerve-wracking moment. "Thankfully," he complied. "Haven't," he answered with a sigh, "but I suspect you were turned by a rogue, meaning you don't have a pack, which isn't a problem. You get accepted in another pack, form yours, or become a lone wolf." Okay, she nodded. I can easily accept you into my pack on grounds of being my mate, else you'll have to prove yourself to the pack. Leah turned towards him suddenly intrigued. How do I prove myself? Daniel smiled. She has been hooked by fighting and defeating one of the strongest and most capable member of the pack. Defeat more than one, you earn the pack respect and a position within the pack hierarchy. Leah purred like a satisfied cat, placed her elbow on the table, leaned towards him and asked, what if I want to challenge you? Daniel gave her a devilish smile that made her heart skip a beat and leaned towards her too, asking why? Do you vie to become the alpha? He restated. Do you desire my position too? Though every wolf know its place, but a subordinate werewolf may challenge a leader for its position, most especially an alpha for pack leadership. They fight to the death or to a winner-take-all brawl, and whosoever wins, takeovers, the loser moves down the hierarchy, is exiled or leaves to start a new pack if I say yes. Leah challenged, arching a haughty brow at him. You sure you've not bit off more than you can chew? I'm quite a handful, he goaded, leaning closer towards her. They stared into each other's eyes, starting a stare-off. They both knew this was game, but they were too intoxicated with the thrill to stop. Trust me, wolf boy, I can perfectly handle you, she teased back, enjoying the twinkle in his eyes. None of them was willing to move their eyes. To Daniel it wasn't in an alpha's DNA to back down from a challenge, while to Leah she has never lost a single stare-down challenge, so why should she now? Moreover, her pride's on the line. So she continued staring, even though looking at his eyes was sending tingles all over her bodies, until she released a yelp. Leah didn't know what happened, but suddenly she was yanked from her seat and placed on his lap, the dining room pushed to the side. Leah released a slow, shaky breath when she discovered Daniel's eyes were now a burning shade of amber. Was this what he referred to as inner wolf? Was his wolf in control? Contrary to her expectation, Daniel didn't do anything, just kept staring into her eyes, and when she tried to climb off his lap, he sent a warning growl that not only paralyzed her, but made her stay put. Okie dokie, what has she gotten herself into? How do you placate a wolf that's hell-bent on having a stare-off with you? After a while of deep contemplation, Leah moved her hand up and his amber orbs followed it cautiously. She carefully placed it on his hair while following his expression. He didn't look angry. She then began to run her hands through his rich blonde strands, tousling and disheveling his already messy hair. Good boy, Leah couldn't help but praise when he purred in delight while nuzzling and rubbing his head against her neck, which she's trying hard to imagine as a muzzle right now. I mean, dogs does that as an invitation of friendship, right? But unfortunately, that was the sight that greeted Asher when he walked into the room. The look on Asher's face was priceless, Ben would have said if he was here to witness this shocking scene. Asher was dumbstruck, his eyes as wide as saucers before it narrowed. His penetrating gaze went from Leah to Daniel and back again. Leah shivered when she felt a gust of cold breeze wash over her and turned. Her heart almost jumped out of her chest when she saw Asher standing at the room's entrance, his stormy gaze trained on her with a very heated intensity that could even scare a tiger. Before she knew it, an invisible force ripped her off Daniel, while Daniel gave a feral growl in response. The force pulled her towards Asher like a puppet, slamming her into his chest with a great momentum that knocked the breath from her. Asher simply reached out a hand and drew her close to him, his grip on her waist so tight and bone-crushing that she bet a bruise must have formed there already. Then Asher turned to face the Alpha, who was already poised to attack with a blizzard-like gaze, and said in a monotone, "We had a deal and I hope you don't back out of it." Immediately Asher's words entered his ears. Daniel's blazing amber orbs changed to his normal blue ones while his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I hope we have that discussion as soon as possible," Asher continued, his monotone as if he was a robot. That said, he immediately turned rigidly and took Leah's arm, dragging her out of the room before Daniel could protest. The werewolves guarding the pack house didn't stop them. It seems Daniel sent them a message through the mind link. Asher was fuming mad. He had arrived early and had to wait, since Daniel's men wanted to inform him of his arrival through the mind link, but when they got nothing for a while, they let Asher go since he had an appointment anyway, only to come inside and discover the source of the unanswered mind calls. He was messing around with Leah. With Hi there, mate. Leah knew better than to say a word. She understood from his dark gaze that he was fuming mad. But why was Asher this angry? Wasn't he the one always pushing her to go and find her mate? Once at the pack boundary, they met some werewolves stationed there, who stopped them at once while Asher tried to talk things out with them, giving Leah the chance to catch a final glimpse of the pack staring at the distant pack house that stood out from the rest. She committed it to memory. Though werewolves could perfectly live and blend in with the humans, but the Silver Pack decided otherwise, preferring to live separately but not too far from the humans. Leah's gaze shifted back to Asher when she felt him grab her hand and led her through the thick forest that hid and protected the Silver Pack from human invasion. Throughout the journey, Asher didn't say a word to her, but the air surrounding them was so oppressive to the point she couldn't breathe. Abruptly, she pulled away, taking a few careful steps back as his blazing gaze followed her every move. "What are you doing?" he asked solemnly. "We kissed," Leah confessed, finally letting the cat out of the bag. It was better for him to release his anger openly than giving her this silent torture. "I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed it," she disclosed. "It just felt so right, like this is what a part of my soul was missing out on all these years." But she stared him straight in the eyes and asked, "But as blissful as that sounds, why do I still feel guilty?" His gaze remained unwaveringly on hers while her voice broke and tears began to slid down her face. Why do I feel bothered? Why do my heart feel guilty when in fact I'm following it? Why do everything seem so complicated with you? Why do I feel for you when I've already being destined for someone else?" Asher clutched his fist, trying so hard to contain his emotions that were threatening to surface, but the girl's words was tearing his heart out. The tears continued to trickle down her cheeks. "What is wrong with me?" she asked, exasperated, and began to wipe her face with her palm obsessively. At her sixth wipe, Asher stopped her and drew her towards him, staring at her with this odd gleam in his eyes. His cold, smooth hands cupped her cheek and rubbed away a hot tear with his thumb. "Nothing is wrong with you," he assured her, his thumb caressing her cheek while his eyes fixed on hers intently. He was just conflicted. Was it right to confess the truth to her now? All this time, he's been careful. What would happen if he becomes careless for once? Maybe it's time to become selfish after all. Alexis struggled against the bound, all to no avail. She was seated on the floor with her hands bind behind her back. She suddenly stopped when she heard the dry creaking of the door, and then someone came in. A guy who seemed to be in his late teens, sandy brown hair with stunning hazel eyes came in, and she would have spent the whole day checking him out if he wasn't her abductor, aka Mr. Psycho. "So, how are you doing today?" he asked and squat down before her with his ever-intelligent eyes. "Let me go, you psycho!" she spat, her bloodshot eyes blazing with hatred. She thought she had fallen into safe hands when she passed out on that day without knowing she just went from flying pan to fire. The boy smirked. "I'll let you go once you tell me what I need to know." His hands moved to her face and gripped her jaw tightly, saying, "You just need to tell me everything about them." "You're back," Jenny said, opening the door on the second knock. "Hi Mom," Leah greeted, silently expecting her mom's stern chiding, which surprisingly never came. She narrowed her eyes. What excuse did Asher come up with this time? Speak of Asher. Leah felt her heartbeat double the moment she thought of him. Her hypothesis was right, Asher was her mate too. He decided to come clean at last. But this was absolutely crazy. How was it possible to have two mates? Even Asher testified it has never been heard of, so how was this possible? Leah had to admit, she was beginning to get scared of herself too. What if one day she loses control of all these powers and ends up hurting the people that matter the most to her? This was definitely insane. Leah wasn't stupid, she could smell a conspiracy. She might not have thought of that from the very beginning, but judging from what's going on with her, it was beginning to get obvious. Someone orchestrated this from the very start. She had a strong feeling Asher knew what's going on, but she couldn't get a single word out of him. His mouth was sealed real tight. Leah had to confess, she had never seen anyone as headstrong and strong-willed as Asher. He was slow to anger, instead patiently devises a way to kill you slowly and silently, but when he does erupt, his anger was akin to a tsunami. "It's strange," Leah said, drawing her mom's attention. "What's strange, dear?" Jenny asked, throwing her a curious gaze. "I've been missing for a day or two now and you don't even yell or scold me sternly for not being home these past days." She moistened her lips and continued, "Moreover, you heard about the incident at Caroline's place, yet you didn't even call for once asking how I was doing. I'm sorry if my nonchalant attitude has caused your feelings to be hurt somehow, but your principal Asher assured me you were fine and that you were at Ben's place helping him recuperate," answered her mom with a straight face. Leah scratched her head thoughtfully. Was that the excuse Asher used? "Yes, I know the principal assured you, but the mom I know would be freaking out by now. She would be screaming my head off for." "I'm sorry," Jenny interrupted her. "Okay? Can we just let this matter die off, cause I have not managed to get a good rest since your unexpected disappearance," Jenny pleaded, and Leah dropped the matter upon noticing how tired her mom looked. "Where are the others?" Leah asked as soon as she noticed the house was extremely quiet. "Oh," her mom turned and gave her a smile that strangely didn't reach her eyes. "About that, Trevor took Rex out. Said something about visiting his friends." "Trevor doesn't have friends," Leah blurted. "He doesn't?" marveled Jenny. "Why are you behaving as if you don't know your son is better at communicating with outsiders online than face to face?" Leah asked suspiciously. At first she waved it off as nothing when her mom called Asher earlier as her principal Asher, when in reality she calls him by his name with lovey-dovey eyes, but now, behaving as if she doesn't know her son was socially inept was another thing altogether. Something is definitely wrong. "Sorry about that," Jenny apologized with a smile. "The few days without you here have been quite tough for me, and I believe your brother went to visit the victims of the incident on Friday. His classmates, which I must have presumed as his friends, took him out." Leah nodded her head. "That must be it," she affirmed, and suddenly the doorbell rang. "Answer the door," would you? Someone must be at the door, Jenny requested and left for upstairs as soon as Leah left. Jenny walked towards her daughter's room and closed the door quietly as soon as she walked in. Immediately, her features began to distort and soon transformed into a toned young lady with sharp features. She had blonde pixie-cut hair and luminously large and dark eyes. She looked too boyish to be a girl. At once, Emily began to search the girl's room hastily. She never expected the girl to be back this soon. Couldn't that damn werewolf keep her busy? With the use of spells and potions, it was easy for her to transform and change her overall appearance perfectly into her target, but she could never be able to imitate their personality traits and has to use her own senses and experiences to make up for the rest. Which was why she made the doorbell ring when the girl began to get suspicious, hoping it would give her enough time to find her hair. Bingo! Emily exclaimed when she found the girl's hairbrush. She immediately gathered and plucked out the tangled locks from the brush's nylon brittles, sliding it into the pocket of her pants. But as soon as she dropped the comb on the dresser and turned, she came face to face with the girl. How did she? Gotcha, Leah said, and then instinctively screamed. The scream sent forth a concussive blast that knocked Emily off, sending her crashing through the French window and finally onto the lawn. Leah cautiously peered through the shattered window, her eyes scanning through their lawn only to discover there was nobody in sight. The girl had disappeared. A huge scowl immediately appeared on her face. She had discovered this lady was an imposter the moment she mentioned her brother Trevor. Her mother was very careful and protective of her kids and wouldn't just presume her kids' whereabouts. Slightly shaken, she dug her hands into her pocket and brought out her phone, calling Asher at once. As expected, he picked the call up on the first ring. "You might need to come to my place," was the only word she told him and ended the call. Asher was smart, he would figure out the rest cause she had a pressing issue at hand finding her family. Trevor knew something was definitely wrong, something was wrong with his family. Why was their mom so unconcerned about her daughter, Leah? It was as if their mom had bipolar disorder. After she had heard of the news of the incident, she was so restless, angry, and depressed that she couldn't think straight. She just wanted to see her daughter. Until Principal Asher brought news himself that Leah was all right and in fact helping Ben, who was injured physically, psychologically, and emotionally, to recuperate, and his mom believed him right now. Without even confirming the news? His mom believed the young, devilish principal that looks like a sheep in wolf's clothing right away without objection. How crazy does that sound? Trevor couldn't exactly wrap his head around what's happening, but he felt there was something weird going on in this town, as if he had witnessed it himself. It was just a feeling. What are we doing here exactly? Rex asked with a serious face, staring at the students chattering away their time. Alright, he looked down. He was here with Rex, no wonder he hasn't had a moment of peace. It was strange, very very strange and unexpected when his classmates had knocked on his door and requested him to join them in visiting their injured students at the hospital. Huge fat thanks to Caroline's house party. He would have refused right away had his mom not interfered and added an extra baggage. Rex, to come along. Trevor was not shying away from socializing. He could hold his own in any discussion with his family members and online, but face to face, nah, he definitely has no skill in that area. Sure, he could start a conversation like a normal human being, but reacting, interacting, reading body language and recognizing conversational cues with other people? Definitely not his forte. Let's give them some time, answered Trevor, checking his wristwatch. 1 or 2 minutes. But as uninterested as Trevor was in their chattering, his ear couldn't help but perk up when he heard this particular news. Do you know? I heard Linda moved out of Little Town. No way, another denied. Linda moving out is so yesterday. Haven't you heard that Alexa went AWOL? Another voice chimed in. You're really telling the truth? The second voice questioned. Of course, you do know my uncle is a deputy sheriff, and according to him, her family filed for a missing person report. According to eyewitnesses, no one saw her after the party, and the lack of CCTV footages after the incident didn't help matters at all. Trevor frowned. Alexa was missing? It definitely was strange that such a thing happened to the three besties at once. Caroline was experiencing moderate hearing loss and has to use hearing aids from now on. Linda has moved out of town in a haste and no one knows where she went to, not even her parents, and the other girl Alexa was missing with no clue how to find her. Did they offend God or something? There are rumors flying around that Caroline and her minions were playing a cruel prank on somebody when the incident happened. The first voice disclosed this sudden information. Immediately Trevor saw the gossips huddle around the girl on her bed, and thanks to that, he couldn't understand whatever was said next. I want to go home. Rex whined and pulled on his arm. Fine, Trevor sighed. Let's go home then. What happened? Her ladyship asked in horror upon discovering Emily was in a bloody state. The GI Emily, who just staggered into the room while holding her stomach, tried to say but instead vomits a mouthful of blood. She fell to the ground before her ladyship could catch her and grunted from the impact. Emily slowly stretched forth her hand towards her ladyship, who squatted down beside her. This, she said, presenting the tangled lock of hair before her. With a complicated gaze, her ladyship took the hairy mess from her, sat on the bare floor and lifted Emily's head off the ground, cradling it in the crook of her arm. Girl, Emily tried to speak but her ladyship hushed her at once. It's okay, reserve your strength while I heal you, she said softly to the girl, more like assure herself. She knew through the girl's wheezing that she wasn't going to last long. Emily simply shook her head as hot tears escaped the brim of her eyes. She wrapped her hand around her ladyship's, finally gathering strength, and spoke in a strained but firm voice. Make sure to fill our purr. But then her hoarse voice faltered and her hand holding onto her ladyship's tightened as if she was fighting for survival. Her eyes widened and her body began to shake. Her ladyship frantically called upon her magic to heal her, but there was little to nothing it could do when Emily became motionless. Her hand holding hers dropped to the ground at once as the cold hands of death snatched her away. Even in death, Emily's eyes were still open, staring straight at her, and she let out a wild howl. She had seen many deaths since their great establishment, but none hurt her like Emily's. Emily had been like a younger sister to her, and thanks to her hard work and devotion, she had taken a liking to her instantly. But now, she was gone. Slowly, she closed Emily's eyes with her palm and stood, walking straight to the mirror. Ostend me I quid accidite. She casted a spell and soon the white reflective mirror began to change and, like a television, showed the event that transpired and led to Emily's death. She rubbed her throbbing temple and watched the scene. It was obvious the glass shards from the shattered window had pierced into her, coupled with her falling back first from the first story onto the lawn. Though she had summoned a portal to escape, but the damage had already been done. Her ladyship shut her eyes tightly as pain rippled through her. If it was another person, she would have poured out her anger on her, but this girl was their very valuable asset. Nothing should happen to her. She picked up the lock of hair she had dropped on the floor and smirked, a cold glint in her eyes. It was time to begin. Note: try reading and imagining this chapter with Surrender by Natalie Taylor playing in your ears or background. Trust me, it helped convey the feelings in this particular chapter. Asher picked one of the bloodied glass shard and examined it. I don't think she survived, Asher commented and threw away the shard before turning to face her. How do you know? Leah asked with a curious and disturbed expression. Though they're witches but mimicking someone? The spell takes a lot from them, moreover I think these shards stabbed her first before falling from such a height, though a first floor, but it must have added the finishing damage. Even though Asher tried to assure her, she wasn't still satisfied with his explanation. After finding her mother sleeping in the basement, she realized how close she had come to losing her. I don't know if it's a spell or something, but my mom is still sound asleep. I seriously hope she didn't do anything to her. Aaliyah pointed out her worries to him. It seems the witch sneaked into her house, casted a sleeping spell or something on their mother, then lured out Trevor and Rex with his classmates in the name of visitation, but her unexpected arrival ruined everything. Truthfully, Leah had never liked witches even as a kid, but after spending a few time with Sabrina, she changed her view on them. But now? It's back to square one. I'm sure it's nothing, but I'll have Sabrina check her out just in case, and do something about the window to avoid suspicion, he suggested, pointing to the shattered window, and thankfully didn't notice her face scrunch up at the mention of Sabrina. Fine then, she sighed heavily and rubbed her temple. This throbbing headache was slowly killing her. Are you feeling unwell? You keep rubbing your head? He asked with concern and approached her. She sighed. After using my ability moments ago, I keep having this splitting headache. You must have stretched your ability beyond its temporal limit, which is not surprising, since you haven't gotten any training yet, he said with brows drawn together in a frown. Asher placed his hand on both sides of her head and began to rub it in a gentle and soothing manner. Wow, that feels good. Leah closed her eyes and savored the feelings. It felt incredibly good. But when his hand suddenly stopped, she slowly unveiled her eyes and their gaze met and held. Without saying anything, she could see the conflict in his eyes. He was holding something back from her and it was killing him inside. Do I have to choose between you and Daniel one day? She asked out of nowhere. Asher's eyes narrowed but softened when he discovered she was studying his expression. Probably, he answered blandly, it's impossible to have two mates. You only get one true mate for life. She shook her head. What if I don't want to? You have to, came his rushed reply, else you're interfering with the course of nature. Moreover, the council would never allow that once it comes to their knowledge. Just as two brothers can't marry the same woman at same time, different species can't have the same woman. But I didn't ask for all of this. Leah yelled, this mate bond or whatever you guys call it, you can't just tell me to remove feelings your so-called nature imposed on me. She said in an outburst, a frustrated tears climbing down her cheeks. I'm just. She didn't have to finish whatever she was struggling to say, cause Asher pulled her into a comforting hug. It's okay, no one's asking you to choose now. Asher placated her with his arm around her waist while rubbing his other hand on her back in a circular motion. Leah clamped her arms around his neck, clinging to him as if her life depended on it. This is too much, I just want a normal life, she cried, clinging tighter to his neck with an intensity that would surely strangle him if he was a human. Her tears and snorts stained his shirt, but he didn't mind, instead pressed her face further against his chest as she poured out her bottled-up feelings. They stood that way for a long time until she eventually calmed down. You should get a rest, Asher told her, noticing her red and puffy eyes, but she shook her head stubbornly. I won't be able to, I've been having problems sleeping lately, she confessed. That's your vampiric side causing a ruckus, but your wolf side still requires sleep, so manipulate that. You just sound gobbledygook to me, she said, pushing gently away from his chest. Asher chuckled and then grabbed her arm, pulling her towards the bed. This is not going to work, she whined, trying to resist his pull, but he was much stronger than her. Asher successfully grabbed her and carried her over his shoulder in an ungentlemanly manner as she let out a sharp scream. Let me down! She shouted, flailing her limbs around. Of course, Your Highness, he responded with a wicked smile. Without warning, he dropped her on the bed and she screamed, trying to hold on to him, all to no avail. You! She tried to speak while trying to crawl out of the bed, but he was there to shove her back immediately. And then it became an exciting game as the both used their vampiric speed to maneuver one another. But it seems Asher was more experienced than her, cause he seemed to counter each and every of her move. Before long, she was pushed back to the center of the bed, and trapped perfectly beneath Asher's body. Though it was for a short time, but she was sweating, huffing, and puffing, with the exertion. She knew how much energy she spent trying to evade the vampire who was staring at her unruffled. Leah tried to struggle only to find out her hands were pinned to the bed, she couldn't even move her legs, she was trapped. She glanced up and her heart missed a beat. He was staring at her with that gaze again, that burning yet longing gaze, and he was slowly leaning in. Leah slowly pressed her eyes shut and parted her lips a bit while clutching her fists tightly. He was going to kiss her. But it seems her expectation failed her, cause he whispered only 3 words into her ears: go to bed. You're hiding something from me, Sabrina prodded when he wouldn't answer. Are you done? Asher asked irritatedly when she blocked his path with her body. What is Leah? She asked with a serious expression. None of your business, he monotoned and walked past her. Suddenly she cast a spell and stuck his feet to the ground. As crazy as it sounds, I thought she was adopted or something, which kinda makes sense for her vampiric and war side since her family is human. Unfortunately, not only is she not adopted but was literally a human few weeks ago until now. What happened? Sabrina revealed while excluding the fact she uncovered the truth thanks to Ben's cell phone. Of course, how could she help them for free? Before handing the cell phone over to Dan that day, she had secretly replicated it, but Asher doesn't need to know that. Do you think this is funny? She screamed at Asher when he kept mum. If the council gets a no, the council would not. He countered firmly, eyes dark and murderous. You can't hide the truth forever, the council is bound to find out sooner or later. In fact, right now, they might even be closer than you think. They won't at the moment if you don't go whining eagerly to them. He spat. Now, remove this spell. Sabrina glared at him but still obeyed his order anyhow. She released the spell and Asher moved his leg, relieved to see it was still functioning. You do know you're playing with fire. I do know, he answered and turned to face her. But if it means protecting her at the cost of my life, then so be it. Sabrina sighed and shook her head. She hated mate bonds with passion. How could someone be so unreasonably in love with someone else? How could you just choose someone by sight or smell? Wasn't it ridiculous? Yeah, they were witches and sometimes draw power from the moon when it's at the fullest, but the moon choosing a life partner for her. For once Sabrina was grateful she was a witch and didn't come with the extra baggage of finding your missing half or rib and all its drama. Witches were unbonded creatures and have the privilege of enjoying normal human relationship behavior and didn't have to wait a decade or century just to find their match made in heaven. Perhaps it was just nature's way of balancing order. Unlike vampires who were immortal and have a long lifespan, witches live slightly longer than humans thanks to their magic and potions but eventually dies one day. Though in the search of immortality some witches go the extra mile by snatching humans or their fellow witches' life force and adding it to theirs or simply do a soul transfer, but both methods were frowned upon by the council since their victims normally wouldn't consent willingly. Who in the world would voluntarily give their life to someone else for their selfish reasons? And you? Asher questioned, rousing her from her thoughts. When would you release Dan? Sabrina was taken aback. She never expected such question from Asher. What do you mean? I was never holding Dan captive. Sabrina retorted, eyes blazing and chest heaving. Why are you getting so worked up? I only asked you a question, Asher replied calmly, a hint of sneer in his voice. Sabrina realized at once, she just got played. Asher obviously wanted to trifle with her emotions and he succeeded. Dan and I are complicated, period, she concluded after keeping her emotions in check. What's so complicated about it? Is Dan bound to be killed by the council once they find out about you guys? Asher insinuated, hinting about his own situation in disguise. Dan and I are not you and Leah, she clarified strictly. Or maybe you're just ashamed of being with him, Asher jibed at her cowardice. It wasn't a secret that witches were more prejudiced towards vampires than werewolves, and a witch dating one was normally not applauded. Why you? Sabrina choked, already red in the face, but Asher didn't give her a chance to retaliate cause he continued. After the death of his mate, you're the only one he's ever come close to loving after so many years of living in heartbreak and despair. So if you won't love him, please unlove him. Sabrina was dumbfounded, she didn't expect Asher was going to bring that up. All Nicole knows, Dan was one of the earliest to find his mate among his peers and also the earliest to lose his. After that he chose to live a celibate life until he met her. She could remember their first meeting wasn't a romantic one at all. She had been on a personal vendetta to destroy the rogue vampire who annihilated their coven. She had mistaken Dan for the rogue, almost killing him in the process. But it seems Dan was destined to live a long life cause he survived and helped her get justice. In the process they got warm and cozy with each other, and one thing led to another, they become couples. Unfortunately, the surviving members of her coven objected strongly to their relationship, which she didn't heed until Dan decided to break things up himself. Truth be told, the breakup hurt her a lot. She had gone against her family, coven, and species just to be with him, but he decided to call their relationship off at his own leisure, moreover, even stranded her on Antarctica. Sabrina tried to find the right words to refute his claims, but when she couldn't come up with one, she dismissed him right away. You know what? I'm done with this discussion, she concluded and strode away without turning back. As if on cue, Asher's cell phone rang and he picked it up with a grumpy tone. What now? I think you need to come home now, you have some visitors. Dan's voice came from the other end. Asher tightened his hold on the cell phone as his eyes narrowed suspiciously. Since Dan didn't go into details, it was obvious he had an unwelcomed visitor. Without wasting time, he rushed home, and just as his instincts warned, hot fresh trouble was waiting for him. Behold, at last, Asher of the Nicoli clan, Raphael announced with a dramatic bow while Asher cursed beneath his breath. Leah stretched her body, before shielding her eyes with the back of her hand against the hot bright afternoon sun shining through her window. Her other hand unconsciously reached for the other side of the bed. It was empty. As she thought, Asher must have left. Leah let out a lazy groan before climbing off her bed. She just had the best sleep ever. Asher was right. She felt invigorated and ready to run a marathon. But the window suddenly caught her attention. It seems Sabrina has done her bibbidi bobbidi boo, cause the once shattered window was as good as new. Without wasting time, she checked on her mom, who was still sleeping. Though still a bit doubtful, but she was relieved to discover Sabrina had dropped a note explaining her mom would be up in no time, just the symptom of a common sleeping spell. With nothing left to do, Leah decided to have a little walk before the imps called her brother's returns home. Thanks to the whole supernatural dramas, she has not had time to get a good tour of her neighborhood. So she began to wander about her street aimlessly until something caught her attention. Leah saw a woman with grey hair, obviously stricken with age and pulling a wooden wagon loaded with hay. What? She cursed out loud. Who in the world let this granny that couldn't even take a step without shaking carry such a load? Angry and irritated, she rushed towards the woman and posted a friendly smile saying, "Let me help you, Grandma." Oh, the woman gasped and let go of the wagon appreciatively, and Leah took over her place. "What a nice child," she complimented, a smile tugging her wrinkled face. "Where do you live?" Leah asked, beginning to push the wagon that surprisingly didn't weigh as much as she thought. "Just across the street, my child," the old woman replied and pointed Leah to her destination. "Forgive me for prying, but don't you have kids, sons, daughters, grandchildren, or even neighbors who could help you with this?" queried Leah, who still couldn't come to terms on why she was doing this in the first place. "No one. They're all gone," she answered with a solemn voice. "Gone? As in, left for the city or what?" "They're just gone." The old woman snapped at Leah, her eyes blazing with a weird color which she failed to capture. Leah bit the inside of her lips. Maybe she had gone a little too far this time. "I'm sorry for being too nosy," she apologized and continued her journey. This time she didn't dare to raise a question carelessly, but made small talks which the granny surprisingly didn't object to and gladly obliged her until they reached their destination. "This is the place?" Leah asked, slightly confused as she stared at the simple hut built with mud bricks and thatched roof. She had to wipe her eyes twice with the back of her hand to confirm she was really seeing right. It was quite obvious that such traditional mud house was a primitive technology found in rural areas. So how did one find its way in a bustling town like Little Town? "You live alone here?" Leah asked, concerned over the woman's health. This hut was nothing like the modern houses. It just had 2 windows and a single door. In fact, this was ridiculous. "Here, let me see this," the old woman said to her, stretching forth her hand. Leah stared at her, confused. "What? Let me see your hand, young one. I am a palm reader, so I can tell you a thing or two about your future," she explained, but Leah simply laughed it off. "This is ridiculous," she laughed, tucking a stray lock of hair away from her face. "I don't believe in such. Try me," she urged the girl, who reluctantly placed her hand on hers. "Very well then, let's see," the old woman mumbled, eyes fixed on her hand as she studied the lines engraved in her palm. Suddenly, she felt the woman stiffen and glanced up at her in concern, only to have their eyes connect and hold. Why do you have two mates? Leah froze. Eyes wide and mouth agape. Don't you know it's a curse? The old woman continued, jerking Leah back to reality. Leah at once tried to withdraw her hands, but she couldn't. The once fragile old woman, who looked like she would be blown away by the wind, was now incredibly strong. One has to die, she announced, and this time, Leah was suddenly tongue-tied. How did she know about? Let me go! She screamed, struggling to release her hand, all to no avail. The woman was like an impregnable wall. There was nothing she could do to shake her off, even her strength combined. One has to die. Order must be restored, the old lady chanted, and soon, her whole eyes turned pitch black, scaring the wits out of Leah. Leah couldn't look away no matter how much she tried. The woman's eyes was like an endless pit, and it was swallowing her whole. Suddenly the whole scene began to contort and change while she was gradually being sucked into that deep abyss, and the words "one must die, order must be restored," playing in a loop in her mind. Leah woke up with a start and a loud scream. No! She was breathing heavily and sweating profusely. What kind of dream was that? It was so scary yet so vivid, she almost thought it was real. Sudden her line of sight fell on the window. It was as good as new, just as it was in her dream. What? A sudden yet unknown fear suddenly grabbed her, wrapping its gruesome claws around her mind. Was this a sign? Was she going to lose one of her mates? Though she tried to ignore and deny it, but the contents of the dream was too eerie to be ignored. Was the universe even against her? His blood was boiling. What is Raphael doing here? But Asher concealed it well. It wouldn't do him any good if Raphael knew he was bothered by his intrusion. Raphael of the Raven clan, to what do I owe this visit? Asher announced, more rigidly than he has ever been. Raphael stood from his seat in an eccentric manner, his eyes twinkling with excitement as he hit him playfully on the chest. Why are you so stiff, brother? Or don't you like my visit? He chuckled, wiping an invisible dust from Asher's shoulder. I don't remember being related to you, shot Asher, not a trace of humor on his face. Perhaps if you don't acknowledge the related by blood part, he said, a mocking smile on his face, you can admit we're definitely kindred. Raphael made his point. Why are you here? Asher went straight to the point. No matter how he sees it, he was sure Raphael was here to mess with him. Why? He asked. You don't want me here even if I missed you? Asher's jaw tightened. I have no time for your games, Raphael, he said. As a matter of fact, it would do me a lot of good if you leave me alone. The Raven clan was also one of the most popular vampire clan due to their infamous shrewd and cunning personality. Anytime they wandered into a place, trouble and chaos was sure to follow, which is why they were the most avoided of all vampire clans. Even the council was meticulous in dealing with their mischief due to the fact they always have a lot of trick up their sleeve and somehow always plays the trump card at the end. But aside from that, the Raven clan and the Nicoli clan have a bit of a special and complex relationship. Please believe me for once, I'm here for good, brother, he whined and made his way back to the sofa, plopping down with a contented sigh. I am not your brother, Asher insisted, eyes blazing with anger. Very well then, if you say so, I guess I'll keep my compliment to myself. Raphael pouted a mean moo, trying to express his irritation, and crossed his leg over the other. Dan, who was standing at the side, raked his hand through his hair, musing it up so horribly that one would think he was slowly going mental. How long has it been since they met like this? Decades? Centuries? He couldn't exactly remember, but he knew this wasn't going to end in a good way. The truth was that Asher was technically half Nicoli and half Raven. Even as sacred as mates was, every vampire knows how Asher's father audaciously stole Ezekiel's mate. Ezekiel, who is Raphael's father, had his mate stolen right under his nose, which resulted to Asher being born. According to rumors, Ezekiel's mate Helen and Asher's father Antonio had been lovers and were planning to settle down together, mate bond or not, when Helen finally found her true mate. Unable to resist the pull that comes with being mates, she finally gave in and got married to Ezekiel, leaving Antonio with a broken heart. But it didn't sit well with Antonio, cause right after the birth of Raphael, he whisked her away and out of everyone's reach. Few months later, he returned to his clan with toddler Asher held sweetly in his arms. And according to rumors, Antonio's departing speech to Helen was, "If I can't have you, then I'll surely have a part of you." Antonio never married again, and as cold-blooded as he was, he loved Asher to the core. Which is why the Nicoli clan till date are still on pins and needles. Antonio was bad, so it's expected for his son to turn out worse. Though Dan was not worried about Asher leading the clan to destruction, since he loves it more than his own life, but he was worried Asher would follow his father's step, especially now he has found out he has a fierce love rival. Sometimes blood just never lies. "Why are you here?" Asher asked for the umpteenth time. It was obvious Raphael was fooling around with him. "Fine then, I'll tell you." A mischievous smile played on his lips. "Quickly, I have no time for your stupid delay." "Easy, brother," Raphael coaxed. "I wonder then how you'll react if I told you a little bird told me something interesting." Asher's expression shifted to a slight frown. "What's Raphael pulling off this time?" "Dear brother," Raphael said, and stood to his feet again, approaching Asher this time at a leisure pace until he was standing right in front of him. He dropped his hand on Asher's left shoulder and said to him, staring him straight in the eyes, "Why didn't you tell me you've found your mate? I mean, I know how hard it is for vampires from the Nicoli clan to find theirs. Like, come on, even your own father didn't find his until he died." Asher stiffened while his eyes twitched. He felt like he was hearing wrong. What did you just say?" Asher stammered, his mask cracking at once. "Seriously?" Raphael pushed him at the chest. "Why are you behaving like someone given a death sentence? You finally found your mate, you should be happy." Raphael spun around and guffawed dramatically. "Asher of the Nicoli clan finally found his mate. The heavens has finally blessed you." He screamed at the top of his lungs like a lunatic with an obvious mocking smirk on his face. Suddenly Asher grabbed him by the collar, yanking him forward as he growled, "Who told you that?" Raphael snickered and signaled to his men, who had stood up at once to defend him, to stand back. Well, he mocked. "How comforting to see your feathers has finally being ruffled. Shut up and tell me who told you such a thing." Asher threatened and slammed him against the concrete wall, causing Raphael's men to try to interfere again, but Raphael himself gestured them back. It seems he was really craving a beating. Raphael lifted a mocking glare and said, "Matthew 10:36." Asher's brows were drawn together in a frown as he let go of Raphael, Matthew 10:36 playing in a loop in his mind. He didn't doubt Raphael. After all, he was from the Raven clan, known for their cryptic nature. Asher immediately picked up his phone and downloaded the Bible from online, and his eyes narrowed down as he went through the contents. "A man's enemies will be the members of his household." Gideon. They were avoided for a reason, such cunning creatures. Asher wasn't stupid, it was obvious that Raphael was trying to drive a wedge between him and his men. His gaze suddenly dropped on one of Raphael's men, the one with a sharp penetrative gaze that seemed as if they could look into the depth of one's soul. He knows him. Name is Lark and has the truth inducement ability. He literally can force anybody to tell the truth by looking them in the eye. Their gaze met and they both began a stare down, a challenge that none of the two willing parties wanted to lose. Asher felt him probing his mind, trying to gain access and get him to speak, but he blocked him at once. Only those with a strong mental strength or a natural counter to this ability could ward his attack off. When used against Dan's telepathic ability, Lark cannot exactly assert his influence over him, cause Dan was sure to keep him distracted by putting a disturbing, nauseating, or useless thought in his head. From this, Asher could already surmise what happened. Raphael must have captured Gideon and drew the truth out of his mouth thanks to Lark. After all, Gideon was the weakest amongst them when it comes to mental strength, in addition to his loose mouth. Thankfully, Gideon hasn't realized the girl he turned and his mate were the same person. It was a good thing he sent him away on time. When Lark wouldn't look away as a form of submission, Asher decided to teach him a lesson. Asher increased the intensity of his gaze and suddenly blood started oozing from Lark's eye, and though he refused to show he was feeling the pain, his hands clenched at the sides gave him away. "Aren't you being childish, brother?" Raphael asked, looking more amused than bothered. "No, I'm not," Asher told him straightforwardly. "I'm just getting started." At once he moved his hands and a strange force grabbed Lark and slammed him against the wall. Standing in midair and pinned to the wall, the creaking and cracking sound of bones filled the air as Asher began to break every single bone in Lark's body, stating, "The next time you intrude into my house," he said, and crushed another bone, earning a horrid scream from the guy. He continued, "Seek permission from me first. After all, even a dog respects and bows to his master." Though Asher was speaking to Lark, but Raphael knew he was referring to him indirectly. "Did I make myself clear?" Asher boomed at him as the guy nodded, then he violently snapped his neck to the side, causing him to faint right away. Asher released his hold on him and the boy dropped to the ground like a rag doll while he cleared his hands with a clean white handkerchief he took out from the pocket of his pants. He knew the guy wouldn't die but heal slowly unless decapitated and burned to prevent merging back to his body. "Satisfied now?" Raphael queried. "Would be once you leave," Asher answered coldly. "Don't worry," Raphael laughed. "I would as soon as I meet my future sister-in-law." Asher's countenance changed. "Wait, don't you want me to see the woman that would make you a better man?" Even though Raphael's voice was tender and caring, it was making him sick in the stomach. Asher knew he was just putting on a facade. Moreover, this was an exciting game to him, and all Raven clan feed on excitement. It's like a drug to them. Though all vampires love the game of cat and mouse, especially when it comes to feeding on humans. As predatory creatures, they loved the thrill of the chase, but it was more severe in vampire from the Raven clan. They are the cat and their victim the mouse. They loved chasing, cornering, and pushing their prey to the limit. The victim distress cry are like music to their ears and arouses them further. In one word, they were one cunning, selfish, and sadistic clan. Piss off. Why? Why are you so tensed? I just want to take a good look at her. Or is she not a pure blood? What clan is she from? Or a converted vampire? His eyes widened. Or a human? Raphael's suspicion was further confirmed when he saw the fire burning in Asher's eyes. "She's a human?" He pointed at him and burst into a wild laughter. "Oh my God, My emotionless brother has a human mate, he mocked, clutching his stomach from the laughter. How pathetic! Asher understood where he was coming from. Most vampires viewed human mates as weak and pathetic since they were always in need of saving, and the trouble escalate when they're turned. Then the trouble of teaching self-control to the then converted vampire begins. He continued, but don't worry, I'm sure she's a feisty one, cause a weak bimbo wouldn't suit you at all. Raphael irked him further. But Asher ignored him and turned to leave when he dropped the next comment, or did you steal another person's mate? Raphael gasped theatrically, you really didn't, did you? Oh my god, like father like son. Asher turned and rushed at him, grabbing him by the collar. If I see you even a meter near her, I'll rip your heart out of your chest and feed it to the dogs, Asher threatened, hot white anger blinding him. Oh, I'm scared, he replied in a mocking tone before the smile disappeared, replaced by a challenging icy look as he shoved Asher's hand away. Why? Are you scared I might do to you the same thing your father did to my father? Asher's head jerked up and his jaw clenched at the question. Raphael was wrong. Asher was scared he would do a whole lot more than his father did. I guess you'll find out the more we coexist together, Raphael said, and began to walk towards the direction of the stairs leading to upstairs. But Asher appeared before him in a flash. What are you doing? He asked, grabbing him by the arm. What do you think? Raphael sneered, obviously going to find a room that fits my taste. You wouldn't dare. Asher roared. Raphael snorted contemptuously. Oh, watch me, he said, and flung Asher's arm away and began to climb up the stairs while humming a tone. Asher wanted to interrupt Raphael again but decided against it eventually. After all, it was better having him within his walls and be able to predict his movement than not having him at all and being on tenterhooks. Though her family let her off the hook, they kept drilling her with questions as she expected, most especially Trevor. Leah wondered if his concealed memories had returned by chance, cause his questions were somewhat disturbing and suspicious. But at last she surmised that the recent events happening in Little Town might have spooked and made him feel that way. After all, Trevor has always had negative view of the town from the very start. How are you feeling, Mom? Leah asked, still concerned over her health. She wondered if there was any side effects from the spell they casted on her. From the movies she watched, most spells always carries repercussions. She couldn't tell if it was the same with them, after all that one was a work of fiction while these is reality. But it was quite funny. Few weeks ago, if someone told her that supernatural creatures indeed exists, she would have thought that person as crazy, but now, not only has she beheld it with her own eyes, she was one of them too. It sometimes just feels surreal and unbelievable. Seriously, you have asked that question for the umpteenth time now, Jenny complained. I'm totally fine, dear. I just mistakenly fell asleep in the basement while going through your father's stuff packed down there. Nothing else yet. You fell asleep and someone else took your identity and place because you were too careless, you kunklehead. Leah sassied, of course in her head. Dad has stuffs packed in the basement? Trevor asked, a flash of surprise and excitement on his face. You haven't seen it? Leah queried interestedly. I once picked up a mini torch that saved me from being a wolf's meal, Leah almost blurted out had she not stopped in time. She wiped invisible beads of sweat from her forehead with the back of the head. Phew! That was close. That what? Trevor prodded when she stopped. He had been listening with keen interest, wondering what treasure his sister might have stumbled upon in the basement. But why did she stop and why was her face so flushed? Did she do something bad in the basement? No matter what, he couldn't come up with a reasonable excuse why she was red in the face. Perhaps if his dear sister had a boyfriend, there would have been a lot of possibilities. That looked really cool. Leah lied through her teeth. Well, not exactly lie through her teeth. She had loved the lead pocket torch due to the intricate logo crafted on its side. But thinking about it now, her eyes narrowed down suspiciously. Perhaps in the past she wouldn't have given it much thought, but now, anything that stood out or was too inconspicuous in Little Town was absolutely worth investigating. She had always wondered why she was dragged into this mess in the first place and had a feeling her late dad might know one or two things about what's happening, why everyone is targeting her. And after getting her hands on that lead torch, her suspicion was solidified. Though most people in Little Town claim not to know much about her dad, she had a feeling her dad must have been working with the council or so. She couldn't exactly tell. Perhaps, the reason he had sent them here was for her to uncover these mysteries and fulfill her destiny. What nonsense! Though the memory was quite blurry, but she could still remember it was a humanoid creature or so carrying a quiver of arrows. Maybe she could make a sketchy design and send it to Asher, and perhaps he might know one or two things about it. Hopefully. So where is it? Rex chimed in, looking as much interested as Trevor is. Where is what? Leah asked, confused on what Rex is requesting for. The mini lead torch, ring a bell? Trevor inputted this time. Oh, that she scratched her head awkwardly. I lost it, ugh. Trevor and Rex both sighed a disapproval while shaking their head. Don't kill yourself, kids, there's nothing of worth in there, just some junks and stupid diaries. Leah's eyes widened at once. She had seen those when she had first ransacked the place but didn't give it much thought, but now, any little inconspicuous thing can help. Her eyes met with Trevor's. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Trevor asked, their eyes locked. Of course, and more than she mused. Suddenly, as if on cue, they both jumped out of their seat and raced each other to the basement with Rex trailing behind. Wait for me! Rex shouted, trying his best to keep up with his siblings who were obsessed on getting there first. As expected, Leah arrived before anybody else and made a reach for the extra-large moving box where her father's stuffs were all packed. It was almost as if the universal was on her side, cause the two thick covered diaries were right on top, and she grabbed it just as Trevor and Rex arrived and the real scuffle began. That's mine, no that's mine, I saw it first, I grabbed it first. Trevor and Rex's argument reverberated through the almost empty basement, but Leah was busy flipping through the pages of the diary. She scrunched up her face in concentration while going through the contents of the book. It was written in a strange language that used English characters, thankfully, and not some scribbles. But she was sure the writing was her father's. Though deciphering and translating it would be difficult but not entirely impossible thanks to Google Translate. She could have asked Asher for help since she was sure he would know a gazillion of languages, having lived for so long, but she had to do this on her own. It was personal. Whoa! Trevor exclaimed. Take a good look at this, and brought out a crossbow that weighed a ton, requiring 2 hands just to hold it while grunting with the effort. Mom was absolutely right when she called it junks, Leah said, but inwardly her heart was in a turmoil. Why did her father own a crossbow, and what did he do with it? God! Trevor moaned and dropped the crossbow on the floor, heaving in the process. And this, Trevor said, carefully untangling a pendant that had wrapped itself with the other junks in the box. She gasped when she saw that the pendant was exquisitely designed in the form of a human carrying a quiver of arrows at its side. No way! You should take that off, Leah told her brother, who shook his head stubbornly and had already worn the pendant. You're just jealous, I'm sure you want it for yourself, he accused and made a face at her. Truthfully, Leah couldn't blame him for thinking that way. The skillful and beautifully crafted piece of jewelry attached to the gold chain, which surprisingly has not rusted with the years, had an antique feel. Leah knew that was not an ordinary pendant, just a bare look at it was enough to tell anyone that it probably cost a fortune. You don't know what that jewelry symbolizes? It might be associated with some cult or something, and you're just implicating yourself by wearing it, Leah tried to reason with her brother, eyeing the pendant dangling at the center of his chest. A gesture which Trevor caught her red-handed and swiftly tucked the necklace into his shirt as if securing it from her claws. He sneered, "Are you trying to say Dad was in a cult or something?" "I never said Dad was in a cult or something," Leah restated firmly, "but that's what you're trying to say since I'm wearing Dad's pendant," Trevor argued. "And how sure are you that the pendant belongs to Dad? He could have taken it from someone for safekeeping, or someone might have left it at his place. After all his stuffs were cleaned and stored away," Leah countered, and there came a short silence as Trevor reflected on her words. "Fine, you're right," he breathed, nodding his head in acknowledgement, and Leah smiled. Thankfully, her brother's brain was still functioning. Besides, why was she the one being paranoid? It's as if she switched roles with Trevor. Wasn't he the one always concerned with this kind of stuffs? "We have to keep that away," she concluded, and held out her hand for the pendant. Trevor gazed down at the chain around his neck and stood up as his hand went inside his shirt as if to bring it out, but what he did next stunned everyone. "Yeah, you're right, but that doesn't I'm giving this up," he declared firmly out of nowhere, stunning Leah, and zoomed off like the flash before she could get her hands on him. "Get back here, you moron!" she shouted after him, but all that was heard was his fleeing footsteps and the shutting of the door as he escaped into the safety and comfort of his room. "Well, that was epic," Rex snorted, shook his head and left right away. "There was nothing to find in the box suitable for his age anyway," he thought. But that little Swiss knife he found at the bottom of the box would remain a secret from his family. Rex grinned mischievously and walked into his own room, slamming the door shut. "Ugh!" Leah screamed, stomping her feet furiously and tugging her hair. "Those imps!" "Fine, she won't bother herself until he lands himself in hot trouble after all. Ears that doesn't listen accompanies the head when it's chopped off, and he who laughs last laughs longest. Fine, she'll fold her arms and watch how everything unfolds." With such determination in mind, Leah grabbed the diaries and walked into her room. Climbing into bed, she took one of the diaries and flipped to a page, but when she saw the unfamiliar words she felt dizzy. She closed the book at once. It seems studying was not meant for her tonight. Maybe she should just give this to Asher and let him handle the whole work? No! She screamed internally, trying to caution that lazy voice speaking in her head, but staring at the two thick diaries, she couldn't help but want to give in. After all, Asher wouldn't mind translating these for her, and if he doesn't disagree? Well then, plan B. She could flutter her eyelids like a butterfly, bit on her lower lips or pout it, and then give him the most irresistible puppy face, and if that still doesn't work? Just bribe him with 2 or 3 smooches on the lips. Holy Mother of God, Leah! What in the world are you thinking? But then, give it to Asher. Give it to Asher. kept chanting in her head over and over and over and over until she boomed stop. She quickly picked the diary and tossed it on the nightstand carelessly before dragging the hem of the bedspread and covered herself whole with it as if sleep would come that easily. As expected, she kept turning and tossing, until she finally fell asleep around midnight or so. Leah stirred in the middle of the night from a slight discomfort. Something was weighing her down. Someone wrapped his strong arms tightly around her waist and tucked his face in the crook of her neck. Normally, Leah would have panicked and beaten a nosebleed out of him, but when his scent wafted into her nose, she relaxed and smiled. She inhaled deeply. He smells like fresh snow with a dewdrop of lavender, and it was comforting and alluring. She snuggled deeper into his arms, feeling the warm goodness of his chest. He was bare as usual. She closed her eyes and sighed contentedly. Leah woke up to bright light shining through her window and an empty bed. She sprang up at once. Had she imagined everything that happened last night? She touched the side of the bed she was sure he slept in last night. It was cold and unruffled, as if no one had settled there at all, but was relieved when she caught a whiff of his natural scent and smiled. He must have left a few hours ago. Thankfully, since the incident at Caroline's place, she has not been sleepwalking into the woods again. So she joyfully put on some trainers and leans and went for her routine morning jog. Today was a school day, so she had to refresh her body, mind, and soul. Having known Ben was going to badger her today to no end, coupled with the gossips of Friday's incident, it was still a hot fresh news in Little Town. Perhaps because she was distracted with thoughts, she didn't give it much consideration, but now, she felt she was being followed. She looked around, but there was no one she could tag as a suspect. Just people going about their morning exercises and business. Leah just sighed and continued her exercise, hoping and praying. She was worrying over nothing. Ears that don't listen, accompany the head when it's chopped off. A person that doesn't give heed to advice will bear the consequences afterwards. He who laughs last laughs longest. Don't rejoice too soon, in case your delight at your own good fortune is premature. Holy moly! Ben gasped dramatically as soon as his sight fell on Leah. My goddess! He exclaimed, and without warning, slammed her into his chest, engulfing her in a bone-crushing hug. You're here at last, he cried and tightened the hug, swaying her from side to side. I missed you. Leah rolled her eyes and tried to pull away from him when the hug of a thing passed a few seconds. Ben, she called, but no reply. Ben, she called again, but still no reply, and the students were beginning to give her strange looks. It was not every day you get to see a guy and a girl hugging in the hallway and swaying side to side to an unknown tune. Ben, she called this time, but with a firmer tone, and thankfully it elicited a response from this guy friend of hers. Sometimes Ben's weird behavior makes her question if he's her boyfriend or girlfriend, cause he fulfills both roles. You have a lot of explaining to do, Ben said, and grabbed her arms, leading her to God knows where. If it wasn't for the fact that Leah was now a lot stronger than the average human, she would have had her pepper spray at her side. You just might never know what this guy has up his sleeve. Thankfully, he led her to a secluded corner of the school that served as a makeshift hideout for troublesome students and those who want to cut class. There was nobody in sight, so it gave them the opportunity to speak freely. Now, tell me everything, Ben demanded, leaning against the wall with arms folded and his gossipy ears perked up. Class would approximately start in 15 minutes' time. Ben interrupted her with a knowing look. He knew she was trying to avoid his questions. And what a surprise, he gasped theatrically, hands on his chest. Enough time for us to catch up on things. Now start. Ugh, Sometimes it's quite burdensome to have a friend who knows every little details about her and read her perfectly. Her every lie and deception can't even escape his eyes. Fine, tell me yours first, she asked him instead. What do you remember about that Friday? Ben scratched his head awkwardly. Truth is, I don't remember much. All I know is that I passed out after that final drink and found myself the next day at Asher's place and heard what happened afterwards from your vampire friends. Sounds reasonable, Leah thought. After all, Caroline had orchestrated everything that night perfectly, only it didn't go according as planned. So Leah spent the next 5 minutes recounting everything that happened, excluding the fact that the guy who saved her was also her mate. Ben wouldn't betray her, but he has a loose mouth and might spill the news unknowingly, cause this mate issue wasn't something that should be taken for granted, at least until resolved by rejecting one. Just the thought of it made her heart heavy, but she shifted it to the back of her mind. This wasn't the time and place to ponder about it. Ugh, Ben gritted his teeth. That blonde witch Caroline. He cursed out loud and Leah couldn't help but chuckle. Honestly, this idea of a sidekick wasn't so bad, at least she has someone to share her day without worrying about her secret being exposed, though Ben can be very annoying, like now. So he cooed, approaching her with this lopsided smile that told her his gossip mode has been activated. He wriggled his brows suggestively. Tell me about this guy. Oh, we're so not going there, come on, he whined and blocked Leah's path when she tried to escape. Leah made an X shape with her arms, with a serious expression saying no way, but Ben was one annoying fly. Is he handsome? Ben probed, and though she tried to keep a straight face, a blush betrayed her. Wow, she's blushing, Ben teased her, and Leah wished the ground would open up and swallow her. She hated this mate bond of a thing, just mere thinking about him made her cheeks burn and heart to quicken. But wait a minute, Ben stopped his teasing and pursed his lips thoughtfully. Is this why Asher was jealous? Her jerked up Asher was jealous. Ben faced her with that ridiculous smile on his lips again. You should have seen the look on your mate's face. He was struggling to keep the green-eyed monster at bay. He snickered. Leah frowned. This is bad. What if the two of them tear each other apart from jealousy before they even reach a consensus? No, this is incredibly bad. She has to do something. Ben's face suddenly lit up. Talking about it, why were you with another guy? Isn't this considered cheating? Why is Asher doing nothing about this? He peppered me with questions that wasn't supposed to be answered. Ben might be stupid at times, but he's incredibly smart when on a quest to uncover a mystery. If this goes on at this rate, it's only a matter of time before he finds out the truth. She has to do something right now. Have you seen my powers? Leah blurted out the first thing that came to mind. I haven't, but would love to. I only heard of your exploits last week Friday, which is awesome by the way, Ben jabbered eagerly, much to Leah's relief. At last, the distraction is working. I can't show you the first one yet, Leah disclosed when she met Ben's eyes gleaming with anticipation. Asher says it's dangerous, especially since I have no control over it, she tried to explain to him, but Ben booed at her and accompanied it with a thumbs down. Leah rolled her eyes before she offered, but I can show you the second one, and as expected, his face lit up like Christmas. Sometimes it wasn't that hard to bribe Ben. All right, Leah breathed and cracked her neck and knuckles. Let me get the hang of it, she said, stretching her waist. Ben stared at her confused. Was calling forth her powers that difficult? Why was she stretching and warming up like someone about to run a marathon? All right, come at me, Leah ordered and gestured him to throw a punch at her, which he happily obliged, but it wasn't what she expected. Leah facepalm. Ben, we are not shooting some action movie, I didn't ask you to slow motion your blows, she chided, burning with the need to strangle that guy right now. And when throwing a punch, try not to make it that obvious and ouch. Leah cried out in pain when he punched her unexpectedly. What was that for? Leah yelled, holding her painful reddened nose. You said not to make my punch obvious. He countered. Yeah, but I was still in the middle. But she was still halfway speaking when Ben raised his fist to throw another punch, but she instinctively held up her both arms and Ben's punch met an obstacle. Ben tried to force himself, but there was an invisible force like pushing against him. Totally awesome. But suddenly, Leah brought down the force and sprang towards the direction where they heard something drop. They? Green-eyed monster, jealousy personified. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.